This lesson is on solving equations that contain fractions. So remember that we're still going to solve equations the same way we did before. These will just happen to have fractions involved. So I'm still going to draw my wall. I'm still isolating my variable. I'm trying to undo whatever operation was done to x. So here I have x plus 2/3. I need to subtract 2/3 in order to get x by itself. Now this is where, of course, it will get tricky. If I'm subtracting two values, I need to make sure they have a common denominator. So this side, very easy, 2/3 minus 2/3 is nothing. So I'm just going to bring down my x. On this side, I have -1/2 minus 2/3. So I have a lot going on. I have two fractions with not a common denominator, and I've got two negatives. First thing I'm going to do is say that this is a negative, and then I'm going to keep flip change. So I'm adding two negatives together. So I know it's going to be a larger negative. And then I'm also going to change them to a common denominator. So if I take this first fraction times 3, that gives me -3/6 plus, I'm going to take this fraction times 2, which gives me -4/6. And when I combine -3 with -4, I get -7/6. And typically, we're going to turn that into a mixed number. So 6 goes into 7 one time with 1 left over. So -1 and 1/6 would be my final answer. For my second question, I would divide by -5, because this is -5 times x. And remember, when I'm dividing fractions, I actually need to multiply by the reciprocal. So this becomes 5/8 times -1/5. So instead of dividing by 5, I'm multiplying by -1/5. I can reduce those 5s to give me an answer of -1/8. And that's my final answer. Here are a couple more for us to practice together before I have you do one on your own. On this one, this is a two-step, so I'm going to have to first get rid of this 8. So I'm going to subtract 8. On the left side, I have -3/5 x. And on the right side, I have -1/4 minus 8. So again, I'm subtracting a negative. So I'm going to keep flip change. So it's a negative plus another negative. I'm going to keep 1/4 the same. 8/1, I'm going to turn into 32/4 by taking the top and bottom times 4. So now that leaves me with -33/4. By combining -1/4 and -32/4, I get -33/4. Now I'm trying to get rid of -3/5. So typically I would divide by -3/5. But remember, when I divide by a fraction, I'm actually going to multiply by the reciprocal. So -5/3 is what I'm going to multiply by. Sorry, I got a bug. So now I'm going to reduce to 1 and -11. So x would be -11 times -5, which would be 55, over 4 times 1, which is 4. Again, we can always turn these into mixed numbers if we want to. So 4 would go into 55 13 times. That would be 52. That would mean that 3/4 are left over. And this question, I'm going to combine my x's. So instead of dealing with this 1/3, see how this x is by itself on the right side? So I'm going to subtract 1/4 x from each side. And that gives me 1/3 on the left. On the right, again, I need to combine like terms here. They're both x's, but -2/1 would turn into -8/4. And I'm going to add -1/4 to that. So really I have -9/4 x. Again, I would now divide by negative 9/4, which means I'm actually going to multiply by negative 4/9. So I can't do any simplification there. On the right side, I have x. On the left side, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and 9 times 3 is 27. Here's one for you to try on your own, so go ahead and try it, then press play to see how you did. On this question, I have two values on the same side that should be able to be combined because they're like terms. So if you want to, go ahead and change 4 over 1 into, if I take it times 5, that would give me 20/5 x, and I'm going to combine that with 1/5 x, which would give me 21/5 x. So that's my first step, is to combine like terms. Now I'm going to add 1/2 to each side. Again, it gets very frustrating because we have a lot of different denominators, so I'm going to turn 1/2 into 3/6 because those are equivalent. 5/6 plus 3/6 is 8/6, which of course I could reduce, but I'm really not going to worry about it until I get to the end. Now I need to divide by 21/5, but instead of that, I'm going to multiply by 5 over 21, because when I multiply by the reciprocal, again, that just gives me the x all by itself, which is what I wanted. On this side, it doesn't appear that anything can be reduced, so 8 times 5 is 40, and 6 times 21 would be 126. So 40 over 126. And of course now I can reduce this because both are even. Oh, I should have reduced it right there. Divide by 2 on top and on bottom. So I'm going to say x is 20 over 63. And that would be my final answer. These equations were all very tricky because there were a lot of fractions involved and we were doing a lot of different operations to those fractions. In the next lesson, Clearing Fractions, I show you the exact same questions, but I show them to you in a way that I feel is much easier. So if this lesson was a struggle for you, I suggest watching the next lesson and trying that method instead.